Hello students, in the last session we were discussing about the concept of demand. In this session we will be talking about an individual demand. That what do we mean by an individual demand? According to the demand theory, the quantity demanded of a commodity depends on the price of the commodity, the income of the consumer, the price of related goods and the taste of the consumer. It means that quantity demanded is the function of price, income, price of related goods and taste. Let me write it in functional notation. In the functional notation, I can write the demand theory is in the functional notation I can write the demand theory is quantity demanded is the function of price, income, price of related goods and taste. It means that quantity demanded of a particular commodity depends on the price of that commodity, the income of the consumer, the price of related goods and the taste of the consumer. Sometimes we denote price of that particular commodity with Px and related goods with Py just to differentiate between them. So quantity demanded is based on the price of the particular commodity, income of the consumer, price of related commodities and taste of the consumer. This is Qx is known as the quantity demanded per unit time. Px, this is the price of the price of commodity X. I mean income of the consumer. Py mean the price of related commodities. T means the taste of the consumer. Now the question is that how these determinants affect the quantity demanded for a particular commodity. What is the relationship between the price of the commodity X with the quantity demanded for the commodity X? What is the relationship between the income of the consumer and the quantity demanded of commodity X? And similarly, what is the relationship between the price of related commodities and the quantity demanded for commodity X, and how taste of the consumer changes the quantity demanded of a commodity or demand preference. So, we can write it as, let me write it again, quantity demanded of commodity X is the function of price of X, income of the consumer, I, price of related commodities, taste, and so on. There are many other factors affecting the quantity demanded for that particular commodity. For example, advertisement, passion. There are different determinants which are affecting quantity demanded. So, quantity demanded for a particular commodity which is X, as depends on the original price of the commodity, income of the consumer, price of related goods, and taste of the consumer. Let me draw the relationship between these two concepts. So, from the law of demand, we know that if the price of a commodity increases, the quantity demanded decreases, and if the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases. It means that there is an inverse relationship between Px and quantity X. That is, if Px increases, quantity demand for X decreases, or if Px decreases, quantity demanded for X increases. It means that there is an inverse relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity demanded for that commodity. This relationship is inverse. Inverse relationship between price of X and quantity of X. So, I can write it as, that is, change into quantity demanded of X due to change in price of X will be negative. Less than 0 means negative. So, changes in quantity demanded for commodity X due to change in its price will always be negative. So, this was the relationship found between price of X and quantity demanded of X. Now, let me draw the relationship between the next most important determinant, which is known as income. The question is, what is the relationship between income of the consumer and the quantity demanded? As we know that if income of the consumer increases, the consumer will definitely demand for more units of goods. So, if income increases, it means quantity demanded for commodity X will increase as well. If income decreases, quantity demanded for commodity X will decrease as well. But this is not the case for all commodities. It means that the relationship depends on the nature of the commodity. If this is the case of a normal good, if this is the case of a normal good, normal good means that that particular good for which demand rises as income of the consumer rises, and demand decreases as income of the consumer decreases. That kind of particular commodity is known as a normal good. For example, shoes, education, cell phone, automobiles, etc. So it means that for a normal good, the relationship between quantity demanded for a particular commodity X and the income of the consumer is positive. We can write it as change into quantity demanded of X due to change in income. Now we are talking about the income factor. So change in quantity demanded of X due to change in income will be positive. Greater than 0 means positive. But this is the case if the underlying commodity is a normal good. So for a normal good, change in quantity demanded of X due to change in income will always be positive. But if the good is an inferior, so what will be the relationship between the two? Again, I am talking about the relationship between change in income of the consumer and change in quantity demanded of the consumer. For example, sometimes income increases, but quantity demanded decreases, or we can write it as sometimes income of the consumer increases, but at the same time quantity demanded decreases for a particular commodity, because as income increases, consumers are always preferring to buy high quality goods. Consumers are preferring to buy high quality goods. More expensive goods as compared to cheap goods. So this is the case of an inferior good. It means that for an inferior good, if income of the consumer rises, the quantity demanded for that particular commodity diminishes. For example, potatoes. This is an example of the inferior good. Or hamburger, etc. People will go for buying more steaks as compared to hamburgers, as they are having more money now. So in this case the relationship is negative. We can write it as change into quantity demanded of X due to change in I will be negative. But if we are having the case of inferior good, so for inferior good the answer will always be negative. Now we are talking about the relationship between quantity demanded of X and price of Y. Price of Y means price of related goods. Related good means substitute goods complementary goods. It means that related goods is the combination of substitute goods plus complementary goods. For example, we have two goods. For example, we have two goods. One is X, one is Y. So if X and Y are substitute goods, or if X and Y are complementary goods, then the relationship between the two variables or between the two goods and the quantity demanded of for commodity X will be different. If they are substitutes, the relationship will be different, or if they are complementary goods, again the relationship will be different. For example, if they are substitutes, so change in quantity demanded of X due to change into price of related commodities means price of Y will be positive, means for substitute goods this will be the case. For substitute goods the relationship will be positive. Substitute goods mean, for example, coffee and tea. Coffee and tea. For example, coffee is commodity X and tea is commodity Y. Now both these goods are substitutes. If the price of a commodity increases, if the price of coffee increases, the consumer will shift their demand towards tea, towards the use of tea. So if price of X increases and price of Y remains the same, only the price of this commodity increases. So if the price of coffee increases, consumers will prefer to use tea instead of coffee. It means that quantity demanded for Y will increase. So there will be an increase on this side. If price of X increases, quantity demanded of commodity Y increases as well. Look at this relationship. If price of commodity X increases, quantity demanded for commodity X increases as well. It means that the relationship between the two substitute goods is positive. That's why I am saying that change into quantity demanded of X due to change in price of Y mean substitute commodities, related goods. This will be positive. Now, let me give you an example of complementary goods. Complementary goods. For example, auto automobiles and petrol. Automobiles and petrol, both the commodities are complements to each other. Similarly, SIM and cell phone. Third, for example, left shoe and right shoe. These are the examples of complementary goods. These goods are complements to each other. If you have a cell phone, it means you have a SIM as well. If you have an automobile, you will need the use of petroleum as well. So, these are the examples of complementary goods. For example, tea, coffee. These are substitutes. But what about sugar? Sugar for coffee or sugar for tea? It is a complementary good. So, for the complementary good, if the price of a complement increases, the demand for that particular commodity decreases. So, we can write it as change into quantity demanded of X, change into price of Y is negative. If we have complement goods. So, for complementary goods, the relationship is negative. However, for the substitute goods, this relationship is positive. Similarly, taste of the consumer, fashion of the consumer, advertisement expenditures, seasonal preference, all these are very important factors which are affecting the quantity demanded for a particular commodity. Now, the question is how the demand curve shifts to the left and to the right. Shifts in the demand curve. It means that how the demand curve shifts to the left side or to the right side. For example, there are different factors which are causing shift in the demand curve. One of the example is, for example, consumers income. For example, I1 10 Turkish lira, I2 20 Turkish lira, I3 30 Turkish lira. So let me draw a graph. Here we have income on the vertical axis and quantity demanded for commodity X is on the horizontal axis. So if we have 10 Turkish lira, so this will be the demand curve. I1 10. If income of the consumer increases, it means that the consumer will buy more units of that particular commodity. So the curve will shift to the rightward. This is I2. Now suppose he is having 20 Turkish lira. Again his income rises. So this is I3 and 30 Turkish lira. It means that the demand curve totally shifts to the right side. Why? Due to the increase in income. So it means that income increases, quantity demanded for a particular commodity increases as well. So this is the shift. If suppose income decreases, if this is the original income and from 30 it decreases to 20, the curve will shift to the left side. Again, if the income decreases more, the curve will shift towards this side. So it means that if income increases, it means that if income increases, demand curve will shift to the right. If income increases, demand curve will shift to the right and vice versa. It means that if income decreases, demand curve will shift to the left. If income of a consumer decreases, the demand curve will shift to the left. This is a decrease in income. If income decreases, the demand curve will shift to the left side. It will shift to the left side. So it means that the shift in demand curve may be from consumer income, may be from related commodities, maybe taste, fashion, population. There are different factors. There are different factors which are causing shifts in the demand curve. One of the important factor is the consumer income. So we have noticed that if income of the consumer increases, the demand curve shifts to the right side, and if income of the consumer decreases, the demand curve will shift the left side. It will shift inward. This is outward shift and this is inward shift. So means there are two kinds of shifts, inward and outward. Inward means this kind of shift. Outward means this kind of shift. However, keep in mind that if price of a commodity changes, if it increases or decreases, the curve will not shift. The consumer will move upward or downward along the same demand curve. Means if price, suppose if we have for example, this is price, this is quantity demanded for commodity X, and this is the demand curve. This is the demand curve. So due to the price increase or decrease, the consumer will move upward or backward along the same demand curve. For example, this is P1, this is P2, this is Q1, this is Q2. This is P1, this is Q1, this is P2, this is Q2. Look, if price increases, quantity demanded decreases. If price decreases, quantity demanded increases. Suppose this is point A, this is point B, for example. It means that the consumer will come from point A to point B or point B to point A. There is no shift in the demand curve. The consumer moves along the same demand curve in the case if the price changes of particular commodity. So it means that price will not shift. Price will not shift the demand curves inward or outward. Only the consumer will move on the same demand curve, either upward or downward, from point A to point B or from point B to point A. So it means that shift in the demand curve is not because of the price of the commodity, but due to other factors, but because of other factors like consumer income. If the consumer income increases or decreases, the demand curve will shift. If population increases, the demand curve will shift either inside or outside. It depends on the population. If the population increases, automatically the demand curve will shift towards the right side because more the consumers will demand in the market. It means that the higher the demand, the higher will be the higher the population, the higher will be the demand in the market. So the demand curve will shift. For example, in case of population, this is price, this is quantity demanded of X. This was, for example, D1, this is D2. This is the original demand and this is the new demand curve. and this increase is due to the population increase, because now more people are demanding for more units of commodity at a particular price. So demand population is also another factor. Let me summarize my discussion. If different factors like income of the consumer, population, taste, fashion, advertisement, all these factors changes, it means that a change will occur in the demand curve. And if price of a commodity changes, the consumer will move along the same demand curve. This is known as contraction and extraction. So he will move along the same demand curve, but this curve will not shift towards this side or towards this side. It means there is a moment along the same demand curve. In the case of a price change, if the price changes, there is a moment along the same demand curve from point A to point B or from point B to point A. But if income of the consumer changes, the demand curve will completely shift. If the income increases, the demand curve will shift towards the right side. If income decreases, the demand curve will shift towards the left side. So this was the concept of shifts in the demand curve. In the next lecture, we will be talking about the elasticity of demand and their calculations and different concepts. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.